right. Good evening. I'd like to call the business meeting of the Portland Board of Public Education to order. It is Tuesday, November 17th, and the Portland Board of Public Education is meeting virtually through Zoom. May I please ask the superintendent to call the roll?
Yes, Mr. Chair. Mr. Atkinson?
Here.
Mr. Balfons?
Here.
Ms. Bondo?
Présente.
Mr. Burke?
Here.
Ms. Figdor?
Here.
Ms. Morioni?
Here.
Ms. Thompson?
Here.
Ms. Trevorrow?
Here.
And Ms. Yangala? And Chair Rodriguez.
Presente. And I'll wait for us to get the flag on the screen, and I'll lead us through the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you all. For my remarks tonight, I don't have very much to share with you. Last week, I did have a long slate of announcements to make. The only, I guess, important announcement I want to share is, as I said earlier, a reminder that the inauguration ceremony for incoming board members is going to be taking place on December 7th. We are going to hold the entire ceremony, including the swearing in of incoming board members, virtually. We've gotten that already verified legally to make sure that is going to be appropriate. And so I hope, or rather I look forward to seeing all of you that evening. Our next board meeting, our next official business meeting will be the following day on December 8th, which will be our first board meeting with the new board and would, quote unquote, officially start our new school year. On December 7th, in the inauguration will also be the official vote for our incoming chairperson, which we just held the caucus for at the start of tonight's meeting. For our meeting tonight, if and when we have an opportunity for public comment, I will announce it and I will go over the rules for public comment at that time. I think that's it. I don't have anything else to report on tonight. So I'll hand it off to the superintendent for his report.
Thank you, Chair. I would like to begin my comments today by recognizing the original inhabitants of the land on which our city and schools stand, the Maliseet, Micmac, Penobscot, and Passamaquoddy tribes, known collectively as the Wabanaki, or people of the Dawnland. We're honored to have their children among our students today. I would like to congratulate Board Chair Rodriguez on an amazing State of the Schools address. You nailed it. Somebody much more eloquent said. As you complete your term as board chair, I would like to publicly thank you for your clear convictions and principled leadership over these past 2 years. I've enjoyed working closely with you, have learned a great deal, and look forward to continuing our work together. Last week, we successfully launched POSIP, a parent engagement platform that lets parents easily share praise and feedback about their schools. Last weekend, parents received a quick online survey from their child's school asking a couple general questions about the school experience and also asking for their feedback. Each school is able to review the responses and use the feedback to tailor its own response. Our plan is to use these surveys to happen every 3 weeks for a while and shift to every other week after the winter break. And just to remind you, this is part of our efforts to better understand and improve our responsiveness to family concerns. At last week's District Advisory Building Committee meeting, which was last Thursday, we had an in-depth conversation about the Green New Deal's potential impact on the 3 school renovations. The DABC took no action as we explore with the city the possibility of expediting the review of the projects leading to permitting and guidance on whether the referendum results apply to our buildings. We're also pursuing other options to reduce the potential impact of this citizen initiative on our school renovation plans while acknowledging that it is the will of the voters. We are hopeful and confident that we will have better schools after the renovations are completed in either case. This week, we will be meeting with the different school building level advisory committees to discuss the specifics of each project. Also, Board Chair Rodriguez is working with DABC Chair Thompson to figure out succession planning for our outgoing council and board appointments to the DABC. And we will need to do the same for the BLACs in the near future, the building level advisory committees. Next, as we've been doing throughout the fall, we're going to update you on our school reopening. Today, I want to spend a few minutes teeing up the next steps with our COVID Relief Fund and what you can expect in the coming weeks. As you know, the governor, at the behest of the Economic Recovery Task Force, prioritized supporting school reopenings. With the generous support we received, we have been able to manage school reopenings in a way that has allowed us to provide hybrid instruction for our students in grades pre-K through 9 and positioned us to be able to transition to remote instruction successfully if and when that time comes. Excuse me. The funding has been used for a large number of improvements in our infrastructure, such as windows, outdoor learning classrooms, ventilation improvements, etc. It has also been used for the purchase of laptops and other devices for students and staff to help with remote instruction. These are all capital improvements that are done and paid for that we would not have been able to do had we not had that funding. It has been used to procure personal protective equipment and cleaning supplies and equipment. The funding, however, has also made instruction and managing our daily health and safety protocols at the school level possible. That has included paying for a significant number of staff positions that enabled us to backfill staff who have accommodations or have taken leaves due to COVID-related factors. This has enabled us to create our remote academy to serve most families that were concerned about in-person instruction for a variety of reasons. And as you know, the remote academy is our largest school with almost 900 students being served. CRF has paid for in-school substitutes and support staff to manage daily symptoms checks, social distancing, mask enforcement, and other health and safety routines. It has paid for additional ELL and special education staff as we've prioritized students with special learning needs for time in school. CRF has also paid for our amazing community partners who, thanks to this funding, have rallied to create learning opportunities on the days where hybrid students are not in school to make it possible for families to have a semblance of normalcy in their daily and work schedules as well as provide additional support, additional social opportunities to children who were isolated for way too long this past spring and summer. In short, CRF funding has been pivotal to our efforts and has made our school reopening success possible. That funding is scheduled to end on December 31st. And this is not news. We've been saying this since August when it first became a possibility. As the moment approaches when we will no longer be able to rely on it as a revenue source to support our efforts, we will be engaging you in the planning for what to continue and what we cannot continue to support. Executive Director of Budget and Finance, Miranda Fasulo, has been working to document what we call the enduring costs associated with continuing our investments. She has also been working to identify areas of our approved FY21 budget where there are savings as a result of the different approach to schooling. We're now close to being able to detail both of these, and we will be providing insights into that as part of this week's Finance Committee meeting. On December 8th, we will bring the board a proposal for how to move forward. We will do a workshop on that proposal and take your thoughts and ideas into consideration. We would then plan to come back on December 22nd with a final recommendation for your consideration and action. That will enable us to make any necessary adjustments and communicate with staff, families, and stakeholders about our direction for our return from the winter break. I also want to let you know that we're putting the finishing touches on our Snow Day annual communication. This year, with the advent of hybrid learning, we're planning to only call snow days when conditions are such that power is widely out and our food service staff cannot safely provide meal services to families. We expect to send communication about this to families in the next couple of weeks. Last Friday, we were once again pleased to learn that Cumberland County remains designated as green in the state's school reopening dashboard, while noting that the state is monitoring Cumberland County as the case count continues to increase across the state. We've had a steady stream of positive cases come into our schools, and while we're pleased that the infection has not spread as a result of those positive cases, we are concerned that community spread will make it increasingly challenging to hold in-person instruction for the long haul. To that end, last week, Assistant Superintendent Nally, working with our principals, shifted focus to making preparations for remote instruction, which includes supporting the development of schedules and materials to enable this, and prioritizing the allocation of incoming technology to our students in grades K through 5 who do not currently have one-to-one devices. While I continue to be impressed with our staff, students, and families' commitment to the health and safety protocols, I would be remiss if I did not point out that all of the cases are coming into our schools from community spread. If you did not hear Dr. Shaw's briefing yesterday, you should listen to it, because he says exactly the same thing that I've said, albeit in a much more pleasant and cogent manner. He reported that while there have been over 200 cases in schools in the last 30 days, transmission within schools has been very low. To quote Dr. Shaw, quote, "There is very little transmission within the four walls of schools," end quote. In our case, to date, there has been one instance in our 20 plus cases that was the result of in-school transmission. Dr. Shaw underscored that if we want to keep students in school, we need to slow community spread. And this is particularly important as we look at the coming weeks. As we approach the Thanksgiving holiday, there will be many opportunities to further the spread if we're not vigilant and heed the increasingly urgent warnings from our government leaders and public health officials. We've all been fortunate to have excellent direction from the governor, the Commissioner of Education, and public health officials, and they are clear that the risk can be mitigated with continued vigilance, with masks, with physical distancing, paying attention to our symptoms, and not coming to school or work if you have any of the symptoms or have been close to someone who could have COVID. There are new, clear guidelines around travel. We have shared those with our staff, with principals, and we've asked them to share them with our community. We will be summarizing all of this and sending communication to all of our families this weekend. So I am pleading with all of our staff, students, and parents to please take care of yourselves and your community by following guidelines to minimize the likelihood of becoming exposed and then exposing others. We've worked too long and too hard as a state, a community, and as a school district to lose the ability to provide in-person learning, limited as it may be. As I acknowledge at every meeting, I know that we've asked a lot of staff, students, and families, and they have risen to that challenge. Let's continue to work together to ensure our students continue to have a safe and successful learning experience this fall. And so I would like to wish everyone a happy, healthy, and safe Thanksgiving holiday. School will be out Wednesday through Monday, and then return to school on November 30th. Last year, we did an in-depth look at our high school selection process, and one of the outcomes of that in-depth review was to assert a clear coordinating role for the central office. We started that process last year, and we are continuing those efforts into this year. Also, obviously, with the pandemic, the process for school selection is significantly different than it has been. So Assistant Superintendent Aaron Townsend has been working closely with our school leaders and our communications and public relations team to reimagine the high school selection process. And so I've asked them to provide a brief overview of that process ahead of our first scheduled event, which is on December 3rd. So Aaron.
Great. Thank you, Superintendent. Good evening, board members and all the public. And again, just want to publicly recognize Board Member Atkinson, Balfonts, and Marioni for your leadership over the past number of years. It's been a pleasure working with you over the past year. We are looking forward to engaging our 462 eighth graders and their families and other rising ninth graders in the Portland community in a process to help them determine which of our 3 great high schools will be the best fit for them to prepare them to graduate prepared and empowered in the year 2025. The high school and middle school leadership and guidance counselors have been collaborating on how to move this process forward in the COVID context. Our goals are to facilitate a process that demonstrates how each of our schools work toward our Portland Promise goals and shares common beliefs about teaching and learning while also having unique school cultures and identities. We want to make sure students and families have common info about each school and that we provide equitable access to information about the schools for all of our families. As the superintendent said, to kick off this process, we'll be holding a parent U of N on Thursday, December 3rd at 6 p.m. The flyer is on board docs for your reference, and we've had it translated and are distributing through our district and school communications. As with everything these days, it'll be held on Zoom, and we'll have translation available for all families. We'll share information about the process to learn about our great high school options, as well as information about the process to go through to be able to identify your choice. We'll hear from our outstanding principals of each school as well. The next opportunity to learn more about the schools will be the school-specific virtual open houses. Casco Bay's will be on December 15th, Deering's on January 7th, and Portland High's on January 14th. Again, we have a flyer that's been translated, is on board docs for your reference, and will be distributed as we start to approach those dates to make sure all students and families are aware of those events. Lastly, the team is finalizing our plans for the student virtual visits in late January, which is kind of the final step in our exploration process of our great schools. Ultimately, students and families will need to submit their preferences by February 12th, and we expect to have the initial data about school enrollments for 2021-2022 by Friday, March 5th. I'm looking forward to supporting this process, our school leaders and guidance counselors, to make sure we have a consistent presentation and experience of our 3 great high school options available to Portland students and families. Thanks.
Thank you, Aaron, and that concludes my report.
Thank you, Superintendent and Assistant Superintendent Townsend. Not sure if you guys were expecting any questions on anything that you presented. I had just one quick one on the high school choice, if that's okay. I know in the past, I'm looking at the flyers and I heard Aaron say that we will have interpreters at the open house, the virtual open houses, and the Parent U event. In the past, we've had a separate open house for our multilingual families. I appreciate, I recognize the workload that people have right now, and so having an additional event, it could be, very taxing rather. I'm wondering, is there anything or any consideration that we put other than just having interpreters into the multilingual open house that we are now adjusting for this venue?
I'll let Grace or Aaron speak to that.
Are you talking about the open house that happens at at the school level, Chair Rodriguez?
Yes. So in the last few years, we've held outside of the individual school open houses, we've had an event where all three of the school leaderships meet with our multilingual community and staff, and then we kind of go through the same process, but specifically to attend to some of the language barriers to communicating, and also some of the unique questions and concerns that our multilingual families bring. So I'm just wondering what other than having interpreters for these events, what other considerations we've morphed from that experience?
So I think for with the Zoom webinar, actually we have more opportunities for outreach for people. So one would be the event that is the high school choice evening that is on the 23rd that will have interpreters.
Sorry,
that's on December 3rd. And then each high school has their own open house that will also be on webinar. And in the past, actually, when we were in person, it was very difficult to provide interpreters for those open houses. So right now, because we are in compact world, we are able to provide that kind of opportunity for our families that will be interpreted. So all events, so there will be 4 events that will be interpreted.
Great, thank you. I guess just I'm confident that you are all aware of this and you do this work really well every day, but particularly interested in the way that we did some outreach into those communities for the specific multilingual event. And I'm confident that your team is working really hard to make sure that our families are aware of this and that they can tap into the information.
Yes, thank you.
Absolutely, thank you for your work, Grace. Ms. Victor, I see your hand raised.
Just wanted to say briefly that I look forward to the high school choice process, participating as a parent this year. And so thank you for all of your work. I went hiking with my daughter Bella on Saturday, and we had a boisterous debate. So thanks for all your work.
Thank you, Ms. Victor.
It will be fun, Ms. Victor.
And we're lucky because there are no wrong answers.
Good question. Thank you, Aaron.
So true.
Take good notes, Emily. I'll be there next year with Marley. All right. So I don't see any other hands raised. So we'll move on to next item on our agenda, report of the secretary. Consideration and action to approve the minutes of the meeting of November 10th, 2020. Is there a motion? Ms. Victor, second by Mr. Burke. Are there any questions on the motion? Seeing none, is there any public comment on the motion? Okay, and seeing no hands raised from the list of attendees, is there any board discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of approving the minutes of November 10th, 2020, by roll call, please indicate.
Mr. Atkinson,
Yes.
Mr. Balfont,
Yes.
Ms. Bondo,
Yes.
Mr. Burke,
Yes.
Ms. Figdor,
Yes.
Ms. Morioni, Ms. Thompson,
Yes.
Ms. Trevorrow,
Yes.
and Chair Rodriguez.
Yes, and so that's unanimous and approve the minutes.
I'm back. I'm sorry I didn't vote. Yes.
I was going to say, I did not hear Ms. Morioni, so Ms.
I'm back.
Morioni.
I had to run to the ladies' room. Yes.
Approval of minutes? Yes.
Yes. Thank
All
you.
right, so that's 9 votes in favor, unanimous.
And is Ms. Mangala here? Ms. Yangala, sorry.
She is here.
She is. Mangala, are you there? Okay. All right.
Next, we are on the report of the committees. So we'll start with our curriculum committee, Mr. Balfons, if you're ready to report.
Yes. So as far as the report for this month, we're scheduled to have our meeting next tomorrow. But my understanding is that we're going to do a review of the year. Is that accurate?
Excuse me. Yes, I think we have our year reports.
Perfect. So yeah, just looking back on this year, considering the impact that COVID has had, the curriculum committee has been busy in doing important work. First, just want to highlight some things. Throughout the year, we've received updates on various topics, such as summer learning, illustrative math, social studies, specifically Wabanaki studies and Africana studies, as well as core instruction. I think it's important for the curriculum committee, as well as the other school board members and the audience, to understand that these updates are important, and that, not only do we understand what is going on, but it helps the board elevate priorities, especially during the budget season. And I think of our work on illustrative math during the last budget season, in particular focusing on coaching. And so these updates are, I think, more than updates. They inform ultimately our decisions. Looking specifically into some of the policy work that we did during this year, the curriculum committee worked on the library policies. And so the district library media specialists, they proposed edits and additions to the then existing district policies relating to the school library media program and collection development of and challenges to educational materials. And so in particular, 3 areas. There were the selection of educational materials, instructional media centers and libraries, and procedures for dealing with the challenged materials. Then that policy passed and was voted through by the board. The other policy that the curriculum committee has started working on is the equity policy. And so this policy is, the process for creating an equity policy. We began this, and the goal of the equity policy is to, and here's the following. 1 is created a shared district-wide definition of equity and establish what equity and justice means to this organization at all levels. 2, name systemic barriers within education and that the system has perpetuated, which can be challenged and mitigated. 3, to have a policy that will be used to measure other policies, practices, activities, and processes that occur within the school system to assess in terms of equity and justice. And 4, communicate to the community that the district is committed to ongoing systemic reflection in order to move our system toward equity and justice. And so that's just framing what this policy is intended to do. Now, the heavy lifting is being carried by Member Bondo, Assistant Superintendent Malene Nally, and then we also have Barrett Wilkinson. And so that work has included creating a work group that will focus on drafting the policy, also identifying stakeholders to bring into the process, reviewing the engagement questions for the stakeholders, timeline, and just interacting and working with those stakeholders. Again, this is a big policy, an important policy for the school district. So yeah, thank you for Member Bondo for taking this on. Ultimately, it will come through the curriculum committee and then to the school board. And so that is all I have.
Thank you, Mr. Balfons. Next, Operations Committee, Ms. Thompson.
Thank you, Chair. I didn't realize we were supposed to prepare an annual report. So I just did it for the last meeting. So if we have to do an annual report, I can do it at the next meeting. But operations met on Thursday, November 5th. And the superintendent outlined for us the CIP projects plan and also the new location for the Solarized Portland project, which was discussed at moving from Deering High School because of community concerns to East End Community School. So they're working through that project as well. And the superintendent already covered the DABC meeting that we had on the 12th. Thank you very much.
Can I just mention that I just messaged you, Ms. Thompson, that I totally dropped the ball on that. I had all of my team contact their chairs and I forgot to contact my chair. So I am really, really sorry about that.
No problem. I think you have a few things on your plate. Quite all right.
That's all right, Superintendent. And thank you, Ms. Thompson. Next, Finance and Personnel Committee, Ms. Trevorrow.
Thank you, Chair. So we are scheduled to meet on Thursday, the 19th at 6 o'clock, and we're going to be discussing the CRF funds. And I did get a report that our Finance Director, Miranda Fasulo, wrote for me here. So I'm just going to bring that up and read through it. So spring 2020 was budget season. We were in planning discussions in January and February. And then in March through June, we reviewed different revisions. There were 4 iterations of the superintendent's proposed budget before it even became the Finance Committee's budget, and then the board's, and then the council's. We had a presentation in March, and then because of COVID, we had a brief hiatus. We put off budget planning because of so many uncertainties. And then we started to ramp things back up in mid-April and through May with the council. The council voted in mid-June, and then we had the July referendum. Fall 2020. So more recently, we've been discussing the COVID relief fund. Beginning in August, we started strategy discussions related to CRF initial allocations, and discussions continued and evolved as additional funding was allocated and plans progressed. Other items that we've covered over the course of the year, we've reviewed budget to actuals on a more or less quarterly basis, including discussion of areas impacted by the pandemic and a workshop on fund balances. We talked about elementary reconfiguration, the BREATHE program revenue model, federal grant funding reductions, and key determinants of EPS funding, which is state funding. So upcoming, we're continuing to talk about CRF funding and how to manage that, and then we'll be going into the FY22 budget. And that concludes my report.
Thank you, Mr. Barrow. Next, we'll go to Policy Committee. Ms. Figdor.
Thank you so much, Chair. And I want to thank Assistant Superintendent Aaron Townsend, for helping me recall and prepare for this annual report. We are meeting, our last meeting of this board year next Tuesday, let me just get this right. Tuesday, the 24th at 6 p.m. The Policy Committee this fall has been working on a number of strategic priorities to update key policies in service of the Portland Promise goals and to conform to our current educational reality. The primary body of work has been in reviewing and developing policies to further our equity goal and to put in place policies that may have historically created the barriers to access to education for all of our students. The first major policy update that we completed were the revisions to our harassment, discrimination, and sexual harassment policy and procedure to establish a foundation for a safe and equitable school environment and to have the effective structures in place when behaviors contrary to those goals occur. We partnered with a fabulous group of very committed community members and student advocates to really inform this work and support our ongoing implementation. More recently, the Policy Committee has been doing a first review of proposed revisions to the student discipline policies. The Center for Educational Equity reviews 7 of our student-related policies last year, and through the leadership of Lyman Moore Assistant Principal Jake Giesman, we have begun to incorporate that feedback. The committee at our last meeting reviewed half of the policies, including the student discipline, suspension, and expulsion policies. And we will be reviewing the second portion of those policies for the first time at our meeting this coming Tuesday, the 24th at 6 p.m. The second set of policies includes the weapons, violence, and student safety policy, the bullying and cyberbullying policy, and the student code of conduct. The Family Partnership Advisory Committee has provided great feedback so far on these policies, and we have been sharing this work with school administrators as we move forward. We anticipate doing a second review of all of these policies once the equity policy work has developed further to ensure that they are in alignment. We've also been working on a plan, to plan a community convening to address the work to review our policies as they relate to law enforcement and to provide a venue for further dialogue coming out of the work around ending our SRO program. We want to provide an opportunity to come back together and ideally heal some of the relationships from the decision making around the SRO program, and ideally come together to move forward. We've identified an external facilitator who will help us convene a group of key stakeholders to process the events of June and to inform our guiding principles for the district's ongoing relationship with law enforcement and our approach to student discipline. And we look forward to continuing this work as we move into the new year. And just lastly, the Policy Committee and Board ultimately, as you'll remember, updated our student device and internet use policy at the beginning of the year to align it with our current context and to make explicit the role that technology plays in our instructional program. That's it for my update, and thanks again to Assistant Superintendent Townsend for helping review all of the work that we've done this year.
Thank you, Ms. Figdor. Next, we'll go to Public Affairs Committee, Ms. Bondo.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I would like to acknowledge the great staff that we had in 2020 on the public affairs led by Miss Grace Valenzuela. So she was really on the top of the program and agenda to make sure then the topic that we had, it was for the communication, how we improve a better communication between parents, community, and the district. And I think before the pandemic, our vision with the board and the team was how the Portland Promise can be more promoted, how we can improve the relationship and the culture between the community, parents of public school and the district. So we were able to create before the pandemic to have a follow-up with the coffee with constituents, and then because of the pandemic, we could keep doing it. So we were able to create some of the different topics to make sure that we improving the communication level by creating, first of all, design on the PPS ambassadors. I mean, the PPS framework for ambassadors is supposed to be with getting part of the parents, some stakeholders, to make sure that they can really promote the branding of the Portland Promise, and make sure then the public really understand the value behind the Portland Promise. And we were able also to improve the relationship during community with everything happened at the junior high school. So we were able to recreate the good atmosphere around the community to understand the value of the Deering High School. So during summer, our communication approach, we were able to build also a video to help the HR to go to hire, to improve the hiring on the people of color staff. They can increase a better approach and to attract people of color, so we can work on that equity piece among the diversity. So beside of that, we were thinking how to improve our website. So a couple of updates around the plan. The website is looking right now at how we can improve our creating different steps by collecting some information and inputs from the students and from the parents around the community also. So beside of that, we were introduced to the POSIP. That's a new weekly routine survey. Then parents and community members will get every week, so they can improve the relationship and getting some feedback around the district and how we can improve the relationship to better improve the communication as well. So those kind of feedback will be done by texting and emails, and helping the parents and community member to try to get some feedback. So what we've been talking about improving the communication, we were more focused on to improve the outreach among multilingual families. So we saw during the pandemic, especially on the symptom check, where we were unable to reach almost 1,000 families. So it's really opened up our eyes to see how our system worked, and how we had some challenge and how to improve it. So the staff were able to go with the multilingual office to make sure then they've been calling those families one by one and updating those information and creating different approach to improve those outreach, so those parents can be informed for everything is happening around the community. So this is almost what we've been doing. So we keep improving the communication by building some different approach and strategy, so the Portland Promise can be well promoted and well branded. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Ms. Bondo. Next, I don't know, do we have anything to report on the appointments committee, Ms. Morioni?
No, Chair.
Yep, I didn't expect it. Are there any other committee and or member concerns to report? Okay, I don't see any hands raised. So thank you all of you who have chaired your committees this year for helping to lift that that weight. I know that this year for us that are running meetings and leading the work, you know, transitioning to doing these things remotely took a lot of adapting and relearning our processes. I know at first it was awkward and not necessarily easy or how do you say, facilitated our work at first. It didn't seem that way, but we've definitely made the most of it. And I think that now that we've gotten into a routine of sorts, you've all done a magnificent excuse me, you've done a great job facilitating your committee's work. And of course, staff who have, as we've acknowledged, had so much thrown on their laps this year, have continued to advance the work of all of these committees. I really don't know how you all do it, but I am deeply grateful for all of your work and all the effort that you bring forward. This has been a ridiculously challenging year. You know, last night as I gave my State of the Schools address, I mentioned this earlier in the day, but I could see your faces in all of the work that we've done. You know, I'm deeply engaged with the work of this district. And as I read all of the accomplishments and all of the challenges that we've overcome, I can literally see your Zoom faces in all of the work. So once again, just deeply grateful for your engagement and all of the hours and all the energy that each of you bring to the work, wrapping up this year. Next on our agenda are consent items. So I'll ask the superintendent to please read the list of donations that have been made to the district.
Yes, Mr. Chair. Under Board Policy KCD, the school board accepts by unanimous consent contributions made to the school district, and as required by that policy, all of the donations are listed in the board agenda under this item. Our practice is for each donor to receive a written contribution acknowledgement expressing our heartfelt gratitude, as well as for their tax purposes. I would like to thank the many generous contributors to the Portland Public Schools who have made donations of durable goods, goods of substantial value and historical or commemorative significance, including a hyper hip hippo sculpture. I knew I was going to trip over that one, darn it. But if you have not seen the picture, you should look at it. Valued at $25,000 from John Scully to display on the East End Community Schools ground. Portland High School Extended Learning Opportunities Student Organizer Training valued at $2,700 from UNUM. $1,000 for the Portland High School CNA program from Martins Point, $5,000 for the Portland High School CNA program from MCF Donor Advised Fund, backpacks and lunch boxes valued at $150 from Gretchen Johnson, staple food items and snacks valued at $1,200 from Northern Light, children's face masks valued at $500 from Victor Rios, 100 sweatshirts valued at $1,000 from Martins to distribute to students in need, and 50 pairs of hand-knitted mittens valued at $250 from Joan Steinberg to give to students in need. We're very grateful to all of these generous donors for their support and contributions to the work of the Portland Public Schools.
Thank you, Superintendent. Another healthy list of donations with only a week of turnaround time from last week's list, which was ridiculously long as well. Always grateful for everyone's contributions, of course. Next, old business, consideration and action to approve the amendments to policy ADC, tobacco use. Is there a motion? Ms. Figdor, second by Mr. Balfons. Superintendent, please speak to the motion.
Tonight, for your consideration and action, we have our request to approve changes to policy ADC, tobacco use and vaping. This policy was approved by the policy committee back in the spring, and we held a workshop on it at last week's meeting. Last year, as you know, we worked with a group of school leaders, nurses, social workers, and city public health advocates to update our tobacco and vaping policy. And this is another example of the collaborative policymaking process that we have successfully used most recently on the changes that you approved to policy ACAA, the harassment, sexual harassment, and discrimination policy. Just before I turn it over to Assistant Superintendent Aaron Townsend, I would like to recognize and thank him for his yeoman efforts to engage in this approach to policy development. I believe it comes naturally to Aaron to work with multiple stakeholders to achieve outstanding results, and this is another example of that. We're very fortunate, Aaron, to have you coordinating our efforts in policy work, and so take it away.
Great. Thank you, Superintendent. Appreciate those kind words. So tonight, as we said, we have before you the recommendation to approve the revisions to policy ADC, tobacco and vaping use and possession. As we discussed in the workshop last week, the policy reflects changes that were driven by the passage of LD 159 in the spring of 2019. The language of the policy conforms to the CDC guidance for quality tobacco-free policies and makes us eligible for public health resources through our partnership with the city. In the workshop last week, there was a request for some additional data as it related to the policy and more specifically to the related procedure to address some of those, some of the questions about the use of tobacco that were raised. Our best data comes from the Maine Integrated Youth Health Survey. I've attached the most recent reports from 2019 on board docs for folks to dive into more deeply. Those include some Portland-specific data about tobacco use, but somewhat of a more limited set of data just for PPS specifically. But at the county level, there's a little bit more detailed data about both vaping and disaggregations by racial and ethnic groups that are at the county level. So, wanted to share those with you to kind of review that data more in depth, but there are just a few key highlights that I thought I'd share here before moving forward with the approval process. So one, just, if you look at the data overall, our Portland tobacco use rates, which is couched, the data point that's provided for PPS specifically is about use in the past 30 days. So that's kind of, a measure of like current use. Are really quite low. It's 1.2% in middle school and 5.3% in high school. So these rates are trending in the right direction as they are lower than they were in 2017, and they're consistently lower than the overall state averages. However, when we look at the vaping data, and it's hard, we don't have Portland-specific data about that. That is a broader Cumberland County measure, and it's not quite an apples to apples because the vaping, talks about have you ever tried it, but certainly, the data there reflects the, emerging concern and part of the concern that led to the passage of LD 159, the inclusion of vaping in this policy, that we're seeing increased numbers of students having tried that. So to the tune of 14% of middle school students and almost 45% of high school students. So obviously significant concern, part of the rationale for moving forward with this policy. Again, at the county level, there is some disaggregation by racial and ethnic subgroups. So not PPS specifically, but certainly potentially can glean some level of understanding given, kind of how our diversity stands out in comparison to the rest of the community. And I think just a kind of quick high level notion that was consistent across all of the kind of tobacco and vaping data points there was that the kind of most impacted groups from a health perspective as it relates to tobacco and vaping are Native Hawaiian Pacific Islander and Native American populations. They were significantly higher in terms of usage rates across all of the different questions that were posed. That's followed then by students who identify as Hispanic and what students students who identify as white or black were consistently kind of the lowest, reported the lowest usage, and were generally comparable, though white students reported a bit higher vaping usage than black students. So those are a few just initial highlights in response to some of the questions that were raised last week, and there's certainly more data to dig into there around the MIHA survey, as it's referred to. Also, there was just a question last week about the discipline data as it related to tobacco use. So in the past 2 years, we've had a total of 37 incidents recorded in our student information system regarding tobacco use. Of those incidents, 22 led to out-of-school suspensions and another 5 for in-school suspensions. So this is reflective of what our current policy has been, which the kind of primary means of responding, as it's codified in policy, has been, kind of a punitive approach with kind of first strike, second strike, and so forth, as we discussed last week. So again, the current proposed procedure that aligns with the policy, which is what's up, the policy is what's up for approval by you all, reflects this shift to kind of have our response be more centered on kind of a restorative and substance abuse approach by trying to get at, what are, both some of the root causes and what are the use issues going on for the student and trying to develop intervention plans. So focusing more on this as a, public health and substance abuse issue as then strictly as just a kind of discipline issue. So overall, we're asking for you to approve the changes to the policy, which are in service of the expectations articulated in the recent legislation, to make sure it includes vaping and to make crystal clear our tobacco-free stance for all students, staff, and visitors at any time and anywhere in connection with Portland Public Schools grounds or events. So with that, we'll take any questions or board discussion.
Thank you, Assistant Superintendent. So board, if you have any questions, please use the raise your hand feature on Zoom. Ms. Morioni?
Thank you. Thank you, Assistant Superintendent Townsend. I guess my question is, I was trying to pull up my my board docs, and for some reason I'm having trouble. Can you go over when we talk about suspensions because of vaping or smoking, can you talk a little bit about what our response is in terms of, since it is so addictive, what's the response in terms of also getting them help with the addiction concerns?
Yeah, I think so the new policy focuses on that, trying to provide some of those services. There's some front end stuff around trying to align in our health curriculum more tobacco education work, so to try and do some preventative work, and then it calls for kind of partnering, and in often cases that's been in partnership with social workers and other folks in our buildings to be able to identify and leverage community resources like Day One to provide supports to students around cessation. So additionally, some of the public health resources, that approval of the policy will help kind of make available to us our additional kind of tobacco cessation resources and education programs through our partnership with the City Public Health.
Yeah, and I apologize. I had read that about the changes, and I really do appreciate that work, specifically because again, it's an addiction. And to have it result in suspensions, I think again this policy makes a lot more sense to me with having our healthcare workers assisting as well as community members to assist because of it being so addictive. But thank you for that answer.
Thank you, Ms. Morioni. Ms. Bondo?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Thank you, Ms. Thompson. This is amazing, and I just want to emphasize on what Ms. Morioni just mentioned about. Then now we have more different implementation. I mean, on more education and awareness than just going to the suspension, because we need to make sure then is after that suspension is a different steps. I mean, we're building on some recovery, we're building on some awareness about the addiction. So my question is about in our curriculum, do we have, I know we have a health curriculum, do we have any education around the addiction or substance abuse?
Do you want me to hop in, Aaron, or go ahead?
Yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah, I mean, I think, yes, we do. But I think in general, I think you're aware that we've been launched the health vertical content team this year. Mm-hmm. And we're starting with a focus on consent education. And that's connected to our discrimination and harassment policy, as well as to the strong and compelling advocacy from Sasha alumni from last year and other folks. So I think that team is the place where we look at the degree to which what we're doing is consistent across schools. I know definitely there are teachers doing this work. I just can't say that we have a clear and consistent approach across all of the schools, which is why we use these vertical teams to kind of look at some of these areas. And given this policy work and given the importance of this, we would definitely run this through that team to understand who's doing strong work in this area and to lift that up and spread it across the schools.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Ms. Bondo. Are there any other questions? Okay, I see none. I'll take public comment on our policy. So if there's any members on the attendees today on the public that like to speak on the motion, please use the raise your hand feature on Zoom. And if I see any hands, I'll go over the public comment protocol. Okay, seeing none, we'll bring it back here for any further discussion from the board. Okay, and same, I don't see any hands raised. So we will put it to a vote by roll call. All those in favor of approving the amendments to policy ADC, tobacco use, please indicate. And I'll ask the superintendent to call the roll.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Atkinson?
Yes.
Mr. Balfons?
Yes.
Ms. Bondo?
Yes.
Mr. Burke?
Yes.
Ms. Figdor?
Yes.
Ms. Morioni?
Yes.
Ms. Thompson?
Yes.
Ms. Trevorrow?
Yes.
And Chair Rodriguez?
Yes. And so that
I don't know if Ms. Yangala is available to vote verbally, but if not, she voted yes in the chat.
Yes. Thank you. And so that passes unanimously as well, with our student voting with us, the majority. Next, new business, consideration and action to ratify the contract between the Portland Board of Education and the Portland Administrators Association for the period of July 1st, 2020 through June 30th, 2023. Is there a motion? Ms. Figdor, second by Ms. Morioni. Will the superintendent please speak to the motion?
Yes, Mr. Chair. We are now asking you for ratification of a 3-year contract with the Portland Principals and Administrators Association. This contract is the successor agreement to the contract that expired this past June 30th, and it will cover the current school year, the 2021-2022 school year, and the 2022-23 school year. This is the first contract that we've fully negotiated in the pandemic. As you recall, we arrived at a 1-year extension of the base contract back in August, and we are now in the process of negotiating a contract with our youth development specialists. This contract with the PAA represents a significant step forward in several ways. First, it provides stability to our relationship with our school leaders. This contract covers our principals, assistant principals, athletic directors, and the directors at PATHS and Portland Adult Education. These are the people that day in and day out support the frontline work of our teachers, educational technicians, and other school-based staff. They are frontline management, and in any organization, frontline management is critical to the organization's success. Ensuring that they have stability and know their standing in the organization is a priority, and it's very, very important. Second, this contract brings some significant changes to the compensation structure for this group. Coming into negotiations, we were cognizant of the fact that for many of our school leaders, our compensation structure had not kept up with peers across the region. So creating a structure where we could achieve that while recognizing the financial hardships facing the district in the near term, but more importantly, in the out years, was a priority for us. By changing the salary schedule structure, we were able to raise the floor for many of our newest staff, particularly our assistant principals, and create long-term growth opportunities for some of our more veteran staff. We accomplished this by sliding people onto the new salary schedule in ways that prioritize these areas, even if it resulted in lesser increases for some in the unit. And we were also able to curtail increases in the second and to a lesser extent, third year of the contract in recognition that we expect that this coming budget year is going to be the hardest in many years. In addition to regionally competitive salaries, this contract recognizes our school leaders' contributions and achievements in other ways that you will hear more about from Barb in just a few minutes. Also, in working through this negotiation process with creativity and goodwill, we continue to build our collective efficacy as an organization. Our teams worked as one to find solutions to common concerns, and I believe we did a terrific job of it. I would like to recognize our team, Barbara Stoddard, our lead negotiator and HR director, Assistant Director Richard Moore, who was amazing as our organizer and taskmaster, Assistant Superintendents Nally and Townsend, and our board representative, Chair Rodriguez. Contract negotiations can sometimes be difficult, and while you're always glad when you're done, sometimes it doesn't feel really good. I can say that we all finished this negotiation with a strong sense of accomplishment and success, and that's a testament to this team, but also to our partners in the PA, who I know several of them. I see that Dr. Stevens and Ms. Jepson, I think maybe Ms. Santiago are also here, and I hope that they will have an opportunity to express their thoughts when the board opens this up for public comment. But before we do all of that, I'm going to ask Barb Stoddard to walk through some of the new contract details and then help us to answer any questions that you may have. So Barb?
Okay, thanks. I'm going to try to share my screen here. All right, can everybody see that? Great. So thank you, Chair and Superintendent. Good evening, everybody. I'm very excited to bring forward the updated collective bargaining agreement for the board's approval tonight. I'd like to share a bit more detail with you about the agreement, echoing what the superintendent has said. I also want to say that I believe our negotiating team is proud of both the process and the contract language changes that came out of this round of negotiations. We value the work that our leaders do day in and day out to serve our students and their staff, and this agreement reaffirms our commitment to them. The process itself included two teams that were made up of 10 people coming together to work on the agreement. As you've heard, Chair Rodriguez served as the board rep. Not surprisingly, the process was interrupted by the pandemic and the district closure in mid-March. Nonetheless, we were able to reach an agreement after just 6 meetings. The teams worked collaboratively to move through this process and to come to a tentative settlement without the presence of attorneys. As the superintendent has shared, the most significant update to the CBA is the new salary schedule. Before I get into some of those details, I'd like to shout out the work of the subcommittee who met during the course of negotiations to develop the new salary scale. I'd like to commend the association for coming forward with multiple creative ideas for developing the new scale. This is not easy work, and the members of the association's team showed a great deal of flexibility and willingness to work with administration to come up with an agreement. Assistant Superintendent Townsend and I worked with the association's team. Over the course of just a few meetings, we created a proposal that achieved multiple goals. So the new salary schedule addressed identified deficiencies and shared priorities by making the salary schedule more regionally competitive, by recognizing the academic achievements and ongoing professional development of our staff, by acknowledging the commitment of staff to remaining with the district, which results in improved retention rates and staff longevity. And finally, by providing compensation for additional work that some administrators are asked to do by the district. So I'm just going to share a few details about the new salary schedule. First, regarding regionally competitive wages. We reviewed the data produced by the Maine School Management Association for the 1920 school year for Cumberland County, and we saw that our building administrators are lagging behind their peers at all building levels. On average, our building administrators are paid about 6% less than their Cumberland County colleagues. We knew that we couldn't solve for this issue in a single year, but the new salary scale begins the process of making us more regionally competitive. Next, we wanted to recognize the academic achievements of our administrators and make this more visible by integrating the compensation for additional coursework directly into the pay scale. This built-in feature recognizes school leaders that continue their development by achieving a Certificate of Advanced Study, an English as a Second Language endorsement, a second master's degree, or a doctorate degree. On this slide, you're seeing a snapshot of the new salary scale for assistant principals at the 3 building levels. Each step of the scale has a base salary, and then below the base salary are the 3 additional salary levels that are tied to the increasing amounts of academic coursework. One final item that's noteworthy about the new salary scale is that we have simplified the overall scale itself. Previously, the PAA salary scale had 8 different levels, each with 10 steps, as well as an additional scale for the Portland Adult Education Director and Assistant Director. The new scale eliminates unused salary levels and brings adult education onto the regular building administrator scale, resulting in just 6 salary levels. There are 2 other items that I'd like to note related to the salary schedule. In future contract years, school leaders that are asked to take on duties at the request of district administration for responsibilities that go beyond what is commonly done by their peers will receive stipends for activities such as serving on a state recertification committee or supervising summer school. And finally, the contract rewards longevity and loyalty to the district. When an administrator works in the district for 10, 15, 20 years, and so on, they will receive a longevity bonus beginning after 10 years of continuous service and paid after the completion of an anniversary year. This is designed to create incentives for staff and other units to consider becoming administrators in the district. Years of service in other roles, such as a teacher or an ed tech, will also count towards the longevity bonus. The bonus is calculated at $150 for each year of service, beginning with 10 years of continuous service and then paid every 5 years thereafter. We also made a handful of other language changes to articles within the contract. I've highlighted the most notable ones here. Finally, the financial impact of the 3-year proposed contract. In the first year, as we transition to the new salary scale, there will be an aggregate increase of $149,195. In year 2, there will be a 0% increase on the salary scale plus step increases for an aggregate increase of $106,894. And in year 3, there will be a 1.5% increase on the salary scale plus step increases for an aggregate increase of $129,114. Overall, the increase over the 3-year term is about $385,000. Last Thursday, on November 12th, a majority of the Portland Administrators Association collective bargaining unit membership voted to ratify the new contract. I'll close by saying this contract provides our administrative leadership team regionally competitive wages on a new simplified salary scale. It recognizes their academic achievements, rewards loyalty to the district, and compensates employees who take on additional responsibilities. We believe it honors and recognizes the work of our administrators, and we're bringing it forward to the board to ask you to ratify the new agreement tonight. With that, I'm happy to answer questions. I can turn it back over to the superintendent as well.
Thank you all. I'll take any board questions if we have them. Ms. Marioni?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Barb, Ms. Stoddard, for that report, and thank you so much for the both the PAA members as well as our staff working on the contract negotiations. I'm sure it was not easy to get through with all the COVID work you also had to take care of. But I wanted to ask just a couple of questions. One was regarding the service award that's been added, and question was whether or not, is that retroactive or is that start at the sign of the contract? How is that going to be handled in terms of a staff member or a PAA member that may have just hit 10 years, their 10-year service a few months ago? Like when does it actually start to take effect?
Yes, it is effective this year. Folks who completed 10 years of service or any of those other 5-year increments effective June 30 it will be retro to July 1st of this year.
Okay. Thank you. And then I was looking at the edits on the contract, and there was a question I had around under Article 24 under salaries with the steps. It says additional language was added that said the steps on the salary scale are to be used as a guide for initial placement related to years of experience. And then the line that was added was, except that no new hire shall be placed at a step above current employees with the same number of years of administrator experience. Can you just break that down? What does that exactly mean?
So when we have new hires that come in, we will be looking at their years of experience and comparing it to current members' years of experience, because when we moved people to the new scale, the steps no longer necessarily equate to years of experience. And so we will be tracking that going forward to ensure that we don't hire somebody and place them at a higher level than someone who's already in the unit.
Gotcha. I have heard in the past, and correct me if this is wrong, I have heard in the past that oftentimes teachers with lots of years of experience don't necessarily want to become a principal or administrator because they may be making a higher salary as a teacher than they may be as an administrator. So does any of this work in the salary scale help to rectify that in any way?
Maybe I can sort of start on that, and then Barb, you can help. So I think, first and foremost, raising the floor for the assistant principal position, which is normally the entry level, that was an important move in that way. So, I think that what you related is exactly right, and we heard that repeatedly from the negotiating team, and it's also been our own experience. And so I think that, we wanted to be able to create those avenues, those pathways for people within the district to be able to move into administrative positions. I think this helps us to do that. I think the longevity piece is also a part of that. So I also think of that as an incentive, because if you move over your years of service as a teacher or an ed tech or whatever else, as long as it's been within Portland, counts towards that. So you could, by virtue of moving over, and if you had 14 years of experience, the next year you would you would be eligible for that longevity bonus, which is something that right now only exists for this unit as a result of this contract. Did I leave anything out there, Barb?
The only additional comment I'll make is that when we were envisioning this new salary schedule, we looked at the teacher scale and based the bottom of the assistant principal scale off of one of the lanes of the teacher scale. So we were directly thinking about, teachers with many years of experience and what they're earning, and built it out from there to address that issue specifically.
Great. Yeah, that's really helpful to hear. Again, I've always been surprised by that phenomenon, but I'm glad it's at least heading in the right direction. Because again, I just want to say thank you to all of our administrators. It's not easy work, I can imagine. So again, I just want to say thank you for all that. And I'm again happy to see that that this seems to be a cohesive work. And I'm happy to see faces of our administrators nodding, saying, yes, this sounded like it was a really good collaborative effort. So again, thank you to both sides, and look forward to supporting it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Morioni. Ms. Pegdor?
Thank you, Chair. I have a very simple question, which is I'm wondering if the presentation can be added to board docs. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Pegdor. Any other questions? All right, seeing none, is there any public comment on the motion?
I'm wondering if if any of our PAA colleagues would want to comment at this point.
Dr. Stevens, go ahead.
Thanks. I just wanted to just take a minute here just of gratitude to the whole team, and just to really say thank you. You really stuck in there with us when we started just before the pandemic started, and we just had to keep pumping the brakes, and the team was really patient with us to get going again. So thank you for that. And just also wanted to echo what everyone was saying around how important these positions are. I've always thought about it as like the nexus of education. So we're right in the middle of taking what central office is, the directions of where we're going, and then helping teachers who are in the classrooms doing the work with kids and taking our schools further. So that's just appreciate those comments. And the openness to the win-win strategy, so that we don't have lawyers in the room, that we're just talking. It's an authentic conversation, really is able to move the work forward. I think it helps go faster, but I think it also makes it more meaningful. So really appreciate that. And the smaller group that redesigned the salary scale was just really creative, and people were open on both sides to what was possible. We brought in a whole new idea, you throw it out, lay there, throw it out, like, no, that doesn't really work. So then we came up with something that did work. And so the whole, everybody who voted on, we had just over 90%, over 95% of the membership voted, and they all voted yes. So it was a unanimous vote for this on our side. I wasn't able to share that with Barb because it had happened over the weekend. And the goals that we had set together as both sides for the team, we really met those goals. We strive to make those goals, and we've made movement on all of those goals that Barb shared in her presentation, so I won't repeat those. So thank you for that too. And just thank you too to the whole team. So Barb, Javier, Richard, Roberto, Malia, and Aaron, just thanks for the work that you guys did. And then thank you to Caitlin, Sheila, and Sue Ellen for the hours and hours you did beyond your job. So we met with the team, and then we also met outside the team. So while we're trying to recreate school as we knew it, people were in it and doing the work. So thank you. And we really thanks for allowing us to be partners in the work for Portland Public Schools as we think about future budgets as well. So we were in it to win it with you guys. So thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
I just want to agree with everything that Bev said. This was the first time that I had the opportunity to participate in this process, and while daunting and challenging during this time, I learned a lot and really appreciate the support from everyone at central office and on the board. Recognizing the value of school leadership is really important to us as a unit. We have a lot of talented, skilled leaders in this district, and looking for ways to keep attracting additional leadership to our district and keep people wanting to stay here. Additionally, looking for, that recognition that, what is next in someone's career, and helping people develop professionally, and recognizing the importance of both continued education and continued leadership opportunities within the role. That's been really important to us. And I think underscoring, creating the pathway to school leadership and making it attractive in some way for future building leaders was a huge priority to us. So we hope that, we have so many talented teachers and educators in this district. We also hope we can be growing new school leaders within, and that we value everything that we do in Portland to train and retain and keep people as they grow into their next position. So we're all really proud to be members of this team, having done this work, but also to just be members of the PAA and of the leadership team in Portland. So thanks for all your support.
Thank you, Sue. Okay, so I don't see anyone else waiting, so we'll bring it back to the board for discussion. And I see Ms. Thompson has her hand raised.
I just have a question. While I appreciate all the hard work that went into this, typically we don't have, when we're talking about negotiations, have people that are on the negotiating team talking before the board votes. So I'm just a little confused on process because this is not typical. I know we're talking via Zoom, and I appreciate all the hard work that went into this, but I'm just wondering process-wise, why before the board even votes, we have members of the PAA talking about the contract negotiations. If you could answer that question for me.
They did so during public comment.
Okay, that was public comment?
Correct.
Okay, I did not hear us introduce public comment. Okay, and usually I saw them as panelists, so I didn't know. Thank you.
Ms. Figdor?
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to say how encouraging it is to hear about how collaborative this process was and how it unfolded despite the most challenging of times, and how much all of you were dealing with and managing, and yet to get to a place where I think everyone feels so good about the outcome. And in particular, I think it takes real courage and creativity and trust to take a salary scale and undo it and redo it and come up with something out of whole cloth. And I'm really deeply appreciative to everyone who is part of this process. I look forward to supporting this And I'm really really glad to see that one major outcome is that we will have more competitive, more regionally competitive salaries for our administrative team. So thank you to everyone for getting to this result and for the just impressively collaborative process that got us here.
Thank you, Ms. Victor. Anyone else? Mr. Burke?
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to say I'll vote in support of this contract. I'm encouraged by both the process and the outcomes, and it's going to help to make us further competitive, and wish we could be on par with our neighbors, but there are discrepancies and equities that are inherent in our geography and our municipalities that would need to be addressed in order to address that. So I'm encouraged by the motion that we are able to make, given the resources that we have. And thank you. I know that administrators have been keystones and linchpins of all the work that's been happening during the school year this year. Not that that's not true in every year, but all the more so. And just trying to, especially in those first month and the scramble between, the approval coming from the board to press and go the very next day to make things live for opening the school buildings and everything. And just there's so many stories, so many hours that won't be told, that won't be counted. And just thank you for all that. So hopefully this is one way of expressing that we see you, we value you, and we'll keep working together.
Thank you, Mr. Burke. Anyone else? All right, I don't see anyone or any other hands raised. I just want to add that, as I told the board last week, I think it's really telling that the main concerns for this bargaining process from the administrators were aligned with what should be priorities for us as a school board, which I think underscores that administrators are critical partners in advancing our goals. It's unfortunate that we cannot bring their wages not just to parity with our surrounding districts, but really to demonstrate the workload that being an administrator in Portland Public Schools, and to demonstrate the demands that we as a board and as a community place on our administrators, because we want to hold that bar really high for them. And so we really should be leading in terms of wages, work environment, and everything else that would help to facilitate not just attaining the best and most qualified administrators, but retaining them. So I'm proud that this contract gets us a little bit closer to that, but I am, as we all should be, concerned that there is still much progress to be made. We have a people goal in our Portland Promise. I like to remind everyone whenever we talk about money, that as important as it is for us to be fiscally mindful of our finances, that our Portland Promise goals are for our whole students, for equity, for achievement, and for people. There is no fifth goal that tells us save money. So we need to figure out how do we advance those four goals while maintaining that financial responsibility. And I'm glad that this contract aims to advance that. Furthermore, I am proud that we worked in opportunities to bring in from within our own ranks future administrators. When this conversation came up at the bargaining table, I had a side conversation with the superintendent, and I said, Javier, first thing that came to mind is in a district that is predominantly made up of a white workforce. How do we ensure that we facilitate these channels to advance professionally for all of our staff? And then he explained to me how that is already under work, how these administrators before us work with their staff, work with their entire building, with the entire district, and they recognize who is interested in leadership positions, and they mentor them and they facilitate them. And the district is interested in making sure that those positions are available. And this contract also helps us advance that. So again, this contract is aligned with the interests of this board as stated through our Portland Promise. And I'm going to very happily support it in a moment when we put it to a vote. My final comments on this are just of gratitude to the work that went on during the bargaining, both from the association's members and, of course, from the school board and the district leadership team. Thank you for all of the work. One term that came up that I cannot escape from repeating, Richard mentioned how he think he was referring to someone else, but I gotta give it to him. The Google Doc Ninja. You guys work those Google Docs so well, and you know all I have to do is occasionally is go in there and like electronically sign it. But all the magic that takes place behind the scenes, it's just masterful. So I just wanted to underscore that and give everyone their due props. Having said all of that, I'll ask the superintendent to call a roll call vote. And all of us, please indicate if you approve the ratifying the contract between the Portland Board of Education and the Portland Administrators Association for the period of July 1st, 2020 through June 30th, 2023. Superintendent?
Mr. Atkinson?
Yes.
Mr. Balfons?
Yes.
Ms. Bondo?
Yes.
Mr. Burke?
Yes.
Ms. Figdor?
Yes.
Ms. Morioni?
Yes.
Ms. Thompson?
Yes.
Ms. Trevorrow?
Yes.
Chair Rodriguez?
Yes.
And Ms. Mangala? Ms. Yangala, sorry.
Yes.
Thank you.
Good. And so that passes unanimously with our student rep voting with a majority. Thank you all for that. Yes. Good. 3 more years. Great. Next on our agenda, consideration and action to ratify purchases in excess of $250,000 under the Coronavirus Relief Fund. Is there a motion? Mr. Trevorrow, second by Ms. Thompson. Superintendent, please speak to the motion.
Yes. Next, we're asking you to ratify a set of major purchases that exceed the threshold for board approval. All of these purchases were expedited this summer and fall as part of our efforts to prepare ourselves for school reopening in the pandemic. Under board policy DIC, purchases that exceed $250,000 must be approved by the board. Because of the exigencies brought on by the receipt of the CRF funds and the need to be able to react with agility to our needs, I approved these purchases so that we could get ourselves positioned to open, and we are now coming back to the board for ratification. I recognize that is not the intent of the policy. I will also point out that in my 4 years here, this is, I believe, the first time that we have come for ratification of this sort. The board memo highlights the purchases, as you will see in the memo. For several purposes, we also had to utilize exigency provisions available in policy and state and federal statute to waive competitive bidding requirements. I would like to recognize Executive Director for Budget and Finance, Miranda Fasulo, and our district's legal counsel, Bruce Smith, for their oversight and guidance in preparing this action and making sure that we follow these policies and provisions. Miranda is here to help me answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Superintendent. Are there any questions from the board? Ms. Morioni?
Thank you, Chair. I guess my question would be, are there any other costs, foreseeable costs that you see besides the ones that you're bringing forward in the next, like between now and the end of the school year?
No, I think we've, Miranda, I think we've got everything that that we, as you know, with the CRF funds, you needed to make these purchases within a certain time frame and then actually have the purchases paid for and ideally be delivered, and if not delivered, at least be in transit prior to the end of the year. And so that was a big part of the motivation for doing that. But we also needed to submit and have our purchases approved. So I don't think there's anything out there that is in the $250,000 plus range between now and the end of the year. Miranda, do you know if there's anything?
There should be nothing.
And my second question was, how much money, are there any remaining funds that we did not use in the CRF? Is this going to max out what we were allocated?
No, we did not max out. There are about $4 million in funding that we were not, that we did not ask for. We actually asked for it and we weren't approved to do what we asked to do. So that was, we did not max out at the 12 million.
And again, this is the last of either what you would be able to request for or what we would approve for the CRF. That's it.
That's correct.
Thank you.
Any other questions? All right. I don't see any other hands raised. Just looking over the memo, and we'll take any public comment, or is there any public comment on the motion? If I see any hands raised on the list of attendees, I'll go over the public comment rules. Just wait a moment for that. All right, I don't see any hands raised, so I'll bring it back to the board for board discussion. Don't see any hands raised. I don't have any comments to make other than, clearly these purchases are critical to our reopening plans and specifically to our remote learning opportunities. I'm glad to see the school buses were approved because I think that, again, of all of these purchases have long-term uses, so these aren't like a one-time thing. So in terms of bang for your buck, this is certainly not just pandemic investments, but long-term investments. So I'm happy that we were able to identify these needs. I guess I should have asked the question, how many of these, particularly the devices, are we still waiting on for? Sorry, I know we're in discussions.
We are waiting for all but the 500 staff devices that we've received. We're still waiting for all of the Chromebooks and all of the iPads. They're scheduled to arrive now at the end of November, early December at the latest. So, crossing our fingers that they will actually arrive.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you, Superintendent. So like I said, I don't have any other comments or questions. So I'll ask us to put it to a roll call vote. Although, please indicate if you're in favor of ratifying purchases in the excess of $250,000 under the Coronavirus Relief Fund. Superintendent, please call the roll.
Mr. Atkinson?
Yes.
Mr. Balfons?
Yes.
Ms. Bondo?
Yes.
Mr. Burke?
Yes.
Ms. Figdor?
Yes.
Ms. Morioni?
Yes.
Ms. Thompson?
Yes.
Ms. Trevorrow?
Yes.
Chair Rodriguez?
Yes.
And Ms. Yangala? Thank you. Yes.
Yes, and so that passes unanimously with our student voting with the majority. Next, being that it is before the hour of 10 p.m., is there any public comment on items not on this evening's agenda? And I'm sorry, is there any member of the public who'd like to speak on any item not in this evening's agenda? And if I see any hands raised, I'll go over the public comment rules. I don't see any hands raised, so I will close the public comment portion of our meeting, and I will ask for a motion to adjourn. Ms. Morioni, second by Mr. Balfons. All those in favor, please indicate. And we've adjourned at 9:07 p.m. Thank you all very much for your work tonight. We'll see you in a couple of weeks. Oh, and a very happy Thanksgiving next week to all, and enjoy the time off if you do get some next week. Have a good night, all.